Good afternoon, everybody. Today, in our interest of keeping your kitchen fun while isolating, I'm going to make one of our family's very personal favorites, and that is my mom's recipe for buttermilk biscuits. So my amazing cameraman is going to give us a view of the recipe, and I will also post it on my Facebook page. And now we're going to get to work. So first, we have 6 cups of flour, to which we are going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. Oops, and my measuring spoons are over here. So you'll notice in here that I did the same thing I did when I was making bread, in that I left my cups in kind of mountains so that I would know how many. So 6 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of sugar. You don't have to add this, but I find it doesn't add a lot of sweetness to the biscuits, but it gives them a nice edge. If you're concerned about your sugar, you can leave it out. It's not that big a deal. So now we have 8 teaspoons of baking powder. This is what makes them rise. These are still baking powder biscuit, just not the usual traditional. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ring the bell. Okay, now, did I lose my lid? There we go. So, this is all, just double check, this is all of our dry ingredients. We're just gonna mix them around. I just use the same tool I'm gonna use to cut in the shortening. Then we have 2/3 of a cup of shortening. I like to use Golden Crisco. I think it adds a little sort of buttery flavor, but you can certainly use whatever shortening you have. So this you want to cut in. You don't need to worry if it's all perfectly even. It's the fat mixed with flour that makes things flaky. So if your shortening is in different sizes, like some of them are pea-sized and some of them are marble sized, then that's okay, because it's just going to add to the flakiness of your biscuit. You just want to make sure that the shortening is fairly well broken down. There we have it. And, oh, hands have been washed. Now, I'm just going to add 1 liter or quart of buttermilk. It doesn't matter what fat content the buttermilk is. It's just, there's something about the buttermilk, I think it's because it has that slightly sour sort of vinegary texture that seems to make things rise. So you get an extra rise out of this. So mix all of the flour and the buttermilk together. Takes a few minutes and you'll get a kind of a, I don't know, thick, lumpy, goopy mess. You're on the right track. Keep working. Make sure that the flour is worked in. You can feel the texture changing and you can smell the buttermilk. So it's not quite all incorporated. You can take a look. You can see the consistency. It's a little bit shaggy. So with that in mind, I'm going to move the rest of these tools out of the way. Dump this out onto a floured board, or I use a Silpat. But in this case, because it's still, yeah, good for me, I did my usual. There's some all over the floor. Get it all on there, because now you're going to knead it a little bit. So gathering it all together, it doesn't need to be kneaded the way bread does. but you do need to incorporate it so that you're getting it more of a dough-like texture. So just pull from the sides to the center, getting all those little bits and ends worked in, and you can feel it coming together, kind of a almost rubbery consistency. So you'd see it starting to hold together on its own. So this is where you want to get the last of that flour. Just keep pulling and pushing. You can see what you're seeing there is the beginning. You see these layers of fat. That's the beginning of where you're going to get a lovely flaky biscuit. Okay. Having a little bit of flour left on the bottom kind of helps, because then you don't have to flour the board when you're getting ready to cut your biscuits. Okay, so now you can feel it. It's holding together like a ball on its own. So now it's time. You don't want to overwork it because you'll make your biscuit tough. Now you've got a couple of options here. You can take your rolling pin and flour it and roll this out. But I don't know, this is the way my mom taught me. Just a little flour on your hands. Hands are great kitchen tools as long as they're clean. So just keep working it out, because we want it to be about roughly an inch thick. So for how much flour you put in there, it doesn't seem like very much, but we're going to do a couple of things with it, so you'll see. So just keep pushing it out. Like I said, you can use your rolling pin if that makes you happier, but I'm just giving myself some room to cut things out. There. So we've got it consistently about an inch thick. Now, we're ready to put it on the baking sheet. Now I'm just going to move my recipe here. So what I have here is a rimless baking sheet that I've put a piece of parchment paper on. If you don't have parchment paper, just grease the sheet. Dust a little bit of, make a puddle of flour for your cookie cutter. You can just stick your cookie cutter in, and then making them close together so you don't have to rework too much of the dough. Cut your circles. If you don't have a cookie cutter, you can use a wine glass or a water glass. I personally like to keep wine in my wine glasses, so I'm going to keep going with my cookie cutter. I find this size is a really nice size for a good biscuit. You can make tiny ones if you're going to use them for other things, like I don't know, you're serving them with soup and you want something a little more delicate, but I find this is just about the right size for me anyway. So as we're pulling, now we're going to lift these off. We're going to put them on the sheet. You can have them touch, but I find it's better if you have a little bit of room between them, because then you get a nice rise. The air gets to move around them. That's why the rimless sheet is so nice, because when the air moves around it, your biscuit raises better. I find if you put them right next to each other, some people cut them in squares and put them against each other like that, you have more of a, I don't know, more of a bready consistency to your biscuit. And I just like the old school biscuits that I grew up with in Cape Breton. So we're keeping on cutting till we have a cookie sheet full. These are going to raise really nice and tall. And we're also going to have a little bit of dough left over that I can show you. There are a lot of wonderful things you can do with biscuit dough. Biscuits are just the beginning. So let me just cut a few more out there. Fill the sheet. Now, okay, so now our biscuits are on the sheet. We're just going to, this is an optional touch, but if you use one beaten egg and just lightly brush the top of your biscuits with the egg, then you get a nice shiny biscuit top, and it adds a really nice texture to the top. So as I said, you don't have to do it, or you can brush it with a little bit of milk or a little bit of water if you're being economical, but these are the deluxe buttermilk biscuits. So let's take it the whole way and do everything we can to make these the yummiest biscuits they can be. So I am just going to put these in the oven, 425 for 15 minutes, and I will bring you back when they're out of the oven. So if you want to stay tuned, then we're going to have, I'm going to show you what to do. Oh, the cameraman showed me. I missed some biscuits. I'll bring you back when we take these out of the oven, but I'm going to do another video on what to do with the rest of the dough. So please stay tuned. I'll bring you some nice warm biscuits and show you how to make some cinnamon rolls with the rest of the biscuit dough. So now we're moving on to stage 2 of what to do with your biscuit dough. Of course, you can just make some more biscuits. We know they're yummy. But in our family, we're a big fan of cinnamon rolls. So we use this same recipe and we keep it simple. So we just take this biscuit dough that we have and we want it to be in a rectangle. So we're going to push it out. Once more, you could use your rolling pin if you want to. I like this to be really quite a bit thinner because we're going to make a roll with this, and we want to we don't want it to be overwhelmed. So we're going to push this out till it's a little bit thinner, and it needs to be a rectangle. Otherwise your rolling isn't going to work. Fill in any gaps. Biscuit dough is very, very forgiving. Okay, so we've got it considerably thinner. As you can see, we're down to, I don't know, half an inch. And this is really more about art than science. So I'm not going to give you any measurements for this. I'm just going to, in our case, because we use Baicel vegan margarine, you can use butter or whatever margarine you like. So I am just going to butter this dough with a fairly generous slathering of butter. No rocket science here. So as you can see, I want butter or margarine on everything. So simple. Now we're going to take brown sugar. Take brown sugar. I like the dark demerara sugar, but once more, it can be anything, but it does need to be brown sugar. So I'm going to sprinkle brown sugar. The more sugar you put on, the more sort of a caramelly inside you get on your cinnamon roll. So it looks about right. So now just spread it so it's even. There we go. Now, cinnamon. Just a nice, even coating of cinnamon. Now, if you want to get really fancy here, you could add raisins or almonds, any number of things. I'm just going to pack it down a little bit now because I'm going to begin the rolling process. So starting at one end, so you're just tucking. So you're pulling that up on top of the sugar. And then you just keep going from one end to the other till you have a nice roll. Now, you can just cut this if you like and make individual cinnamon rolls. I like to do something a little different. This is nice for gifting, but it also just is a nicer presentation. So now I've got my cinnamon roll. I'm going to move over to the other counter here for this. And that's where my knife is. So I'm going to take about every inch, I'm going to make a slice, but I'm not going to go through all the way to the bottom. For those of you that are worried about going all the way to the bottom, all you have to do is take a wooden knife, put it on the other side, and then when your knife hits the wooden spoon, then you stop. That way you'll have a consistent height on the bottom. So, slicing all the way through, straight across, just leaving that little bit at the bottom that stays connected, because that's what's going to make this look really pretty. So now we have that all the way across. And then this is just really simple. You just pull each side in a different direction. One to the right, one to the left. One to the right, one to the left. One to the right, one to the left. You can see where we're going here. Just keeps it really simple. And there you go. We're going to put this in the oven, and you'll see what it all looks like when we're finished. Next and last step will be the reveal. Thanks, folks. Okay, now our lovely cinnamon twists are out of the oven. As you can see, it took about 15 minutes. These are really yummy. If you really want to add something to it, you can put some fresh orange juice in with a little bit of icing sugar and just drizzle it over. But they're pretty good on their own. And just so that I can show you just how good they are, let's take a look right here. These are steaming hot. Look at all that nice, lovely, gooey brown sugar and butter and cinnamon. These are delicious. So, cinnamon twists. As I've said before, this is a great thing to do in isolation. If you like to eat, you need to learn to love your kitchen. I think my next project is going to be pastry at request from someone, so stay tuned.